it's Dorothy Guiding with Scrapbooking Quebec. Happy New Year. For my first layout in 2023, I'm starting off easy. I'm going to share a fun design and easy technique, perfect for leftover collections. This is going to be a Christmas version, but you can apply it to any collection, any theme at all. Here is the material I'll be using. I have paper and a bunch of embellishments from the Simple Stories Mix and a Mingle collection. All of these products came from the Scrapbook Nerd online shop, so I will link up the shop along with the products I use in the description box below. So let's jump right in. And in a moment, you're going to see what's on my desk, including a frame style foundation page with 3 sheets of paper. I did got 2 of them. There is a tutorial on my channel where I explain how to do that, so that will be linked below. I already matted 2 3.5 by 5 photos. I'm showing you the paper I have. I have a bit of cardstock as well. I have stickers from this collection. I'm showing you my empty chipboard collection because it started falling apart. I punched them out. I do that often, and then I kind of store them in a baggie. I have ephemera, cut apart sheets, as well as self-adhesive brats. So the first thing I'm going to do is build a shelf with scraps of paper. So this is a perfect technique when you don't have much paper left from a collection. Now I'm going to put measurements for the papers that I'm cutting on the screen a little bit later on, but I want you to keep in mind when you create a shelf technique, which is perfect for using up leftovers, measurements really aren't important. Basically, you take your scraps, your long scraps, and create a shelf with them by layering them one on top of the other. And what's important here is that they are all different sizes, different widths, and different lengths. So again, I'm going to put the measurements on the screen for what I'm doing here just for teaching purposes, but you can use whatever scraps you have on hand. So I'm going to pile them up here. And there's another thing. Creating shelf designs is a perfect opportunity to use up those border strips. So that's exactly what I'm doing there. I just cut mine off the sheet at this point, but I'll adhere it a little bit later on. Before I adhere this shelf together, I'm just going to apply a bit of ink. So the ink I have here is Morning Mist by VersaFine Clair. It's kind of a smoky gray. I often use this, and basically when I create layered photo mats, or in this case a layered shelf, I do like to ink up the individual papers. It just creates a cohesive look. So I do that with all of my strips of paper, and once I'm happy with all of this, then what I'm going to do is just simply adhere this shelf together before I continue building my page. But again, super easy. I'm putting measurements for this on the screen. Simply use the scraps that you have on hand. It's an easy technique for using up leftovers. So basically what I'm going to be doing with this shelf is I'm going to be placing it towards the top of the page. So that's going to be about 4 inches from the bottom of the page. And on the shelf, that's where you place your photos. Now you can use 2 photos like me, 3 photos, 1 photo. Again, it doesn't really matter. It's very adaptable, this technique. Now what I want to do is create embellishment clusters that are going to be coming off of this shelf. And I'm going to start with bigger pieces. That's always how I create embellishment clusters. And you see a tree die there. That is from Elizabeth Craft Designs. It's from a collection called Christmas Figures. I will list it in the description box below. It's in the shop, but it's out of stock at the moment. If it's something that interests you, you can press the notify me button. And I'm warning you with that tree die, it's very popular. It's one of those ones, if you get the notification, I'd recommend you buy it quickly. It's really a fun die. I use it all the time. It's full of pieces. That's the one I use the most often. And in a moment, I'm just going to show you an alternative because there is something you can use in place of these die cut trees. But you can see how I'm placing them. I'm basically starting them, kind of layering them and overlapping them with my photos over there on the left, and then continuing towards the right with my 2 photos, kind of bouncing them up and down along the shelf. And my plan is to start building embellishment clusters and having them come off of this shelf. Now, for teaching purposes, I'm just going to show you how to create this tree if you don't have a die. Start with a piece of paper that's 3¼ inches by 5½ inches. Mark the middle of it at the top of that rectangle, then cut down towards the bottom corners, and you have a tree basically more or less the same size as the trees that I'm using. More rudimentary, but very effective and very easy to do. So I'm just showing you what it would look like with these triangle trees. And again, my plan is to just kind of build off this shelf. So what I'm going to do right now is adhere my shelf to the page along with these 2 trees and my 2 photos. And after that, I'll get out all of my embellishing and start creating embellishment clusters coming off this shelf. So here I go. I've sped this up quite a bit because all I'm doing really is adhering it about 4 inches from the bottom and bouncing the trees and photos up and down so they have kind of an organic feel towards the top of the page. Now in a moment, you're going to see I have a bunch of embellishing around me, and this is where the fun begins. So here I have it. I have my chipboard there. I have a bunch of ephemera pieces, stickers, those self-adhesive brads, and a bunch of other stuff as well. Now the only piece I really know I want to use is that van. It's a piece of chipboard with the Christmas tree on top because these are photos when the tree first came to our house and then the tree when it was decorated. So I know I want that there towards the beginning of my story, so over there on the left. And now what I'm doing is digging into the other pieces, just playing around, creating another embellishment cluster over there on the right. And again, I'm having them kind of flow from the shelf. Now I'm going into the sticker sheet with a piece of wax paper, and I pull off a Christmas tree there that's fully decorated along with a few presents. I think I grab a candy cane. I go back into that later. I just want to start with some pieces. So it's on wax paper. I rip them off so that way I can once again play around with placement without committing it to the page. So I'm going to work on that cluster over there on the bottom right. I have that red sofa there, but I'm finding that it's competing with the red van, which I really like. When I create embellishment clusters, I do try to repeat color in each one of these clusters, but at the same time, I don't want them to compete against each other. I want them to complement each other. And I find that red sofa is kind of distracting away from that van, which I really like. So instead I put that banner piece there, which is red, but a little less bold. Then I tucked in a few of the smaller pieces in and around the tree. There's that piano there. I like that because we do have a piano at our home. Not that anyone plays it, but we do have one. And I like how it repeats that wood grain as well. So I kind of like this at this point. The only problem is I don't have a title and I don't really feel like a big bold title. So in this case, I went in and I found a piece of ephemera and it says, "Make it merry," but it's really boring. The color's boring. It's really small, but at the same time, I like what it says. So what I'm trying to do, and I often do this when I don't feel like making a big title with alphas, is take something small and make it what I call title worthy. So I'm basically building it up. I backed it in red cardstock and I'm sticking it coming out from behind that van, which is a fairly significant piece. And I'm thinking if I pop this up on foam adhesive, it may have more of an impact of a title. It does actually, not so much so on screen. Hopefully you'll see it a bit more in the still shots at the very end. So I know I'm going to be popping that up on foam adhesive. I more or less know the pieces that are going to go over there on the right. Again, if you look at it, the trees, the van, all of that kind of flows organically from the shelf. I'm going to do the same thing over there on the right with that other cluster. I am going to have to come in and do some finishing touches, but I don't want to go on to my finishing touches before adhering these pieces because I have too many pieces that are on wax paper. It's hard for me to see what the final page is going to look like when I have a bunch of loose pieces kind of floating around my page, even though I know more or less where they're going to go. Some of these are on foam adhesive basically because of the overlapping. That piano is chipboard, and that banner piece that I put overlapping on top of it, you'll see me do that in a minute, that as well as chipboard. So in order to make those two work together, I had to add foam adhesive to half of that banner so that it could overlap on top of that piano. I hope that makes sense. But you can kind of see how I do have a shelf. Everything is kind of clustered around the middle there, but stuff is popping off of it everywhere. The trees, the photos towards the top, and at that bottom where that banner goes. So it definitely has evolved into an organic shape. Now I'm going in with some finishing touches. So I go into that sticker sheet. I put a red star at the top of that tree. So that actually creates a visual triangle with that red van in the bottom left and that banner in the bottom right. Also, I end up putting an adhesive brad on top of that title piece there, which made it stand out even a little bit more. And off camera, I added 2 more self-adhesive brads. One in the top left in that tree star, and another one on the top, on the right of the shelf. So that basically created a visual triangle again. Also, I adjusted the title cluster because the red scallop border sticker got completely covered up in the layers. And this happens when creating layered looks. And I like that border, so I wanted to see it. Finally, I added my journaling. So let's review this super easy leftover busting technique. Create a shelf with scraps of paper and place your photos on top. And keep in mind, these can be any size, whatever scraps you have laying around, as long as they're long pieces. Tuck leftover embellishments in and around the shelf and have them organically flow from the shelf for interest. And finally, give your eye a rest. You may notice that all around that busy cluster, I left white space, and that really does help. It just gives the eye a rest and it makes that cluster really stand out. I hope I inspired you to use up some leftovers and have some fun. If you enjoyed this video, I'd greatly appreciate a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the Scrapbook Nerd YouTube channel, we would be thrilled if you did. The same thing for my channel, Scrapbooking Quebec. Don't forget to check out the Scrapbook Nerd online shop for these fun supplies and more. Take care, and I will see you soon on YouTube. Bye-bye.